Hey, 7th graders, this is your Unit 7.5.1 test review video. So before we get started on working on any problems, I want to set the expectations for today during this video. So your voice level is going to be a level 0. There should be no talking during the video so that everybody can hear the information that's going on and understand how to solve a problem. If you need help, then please make sure you raise your hand. Your activity during the video is to copy work for each example problem that's on the review. Okay, I will make sure that there are places in the video where it needs to be stopped and paused so that students have time to write down their work. Movement, there should be no movement. And if you have to move, please make sure that you get permission to do so first. As far as showing participation, you will be paying attention. You will be respectful to your classmates by staying at a voice level 0, and you will be copying your work onto your review. So we are ready to go ahead and get started and have a look at problem number 1. Remember, the information that is going to be on this test is volume of rectangular prisms and triangular prisms and pyramids, rectangular and triangular. And you are also going to be responsible for surface area of rectangular prisms, triangular prisms, and pyramids, both rectangular and triangular. Pre-AP, as you watch this video, you will also have some practice with volume of cylinders and surface area of cylinders as well. So on to number 1. So it says a box factory makes boxes in various sizes. One size has the dimensions of 6 feet by 2.5 feet by 3 feet. What is the volume of 2 boxes? All right, so there is some very important information in this problem. It's a box, and we have the dimensions 6 feet by 2.5 feet by 3 feet. And then the other part says 2 boxes. So I don't want to find the volume of just 1 box. I need to know the volume of 2 boxes. So since there is no picture to go with this problem, I'm going to go ahead and take the time to draw us a box. All right, now that we have a box, you can go ahead and draw a box as well. We're going to go ahead and put our measurements for that box so that way we know what they are. So we have 6 feet by 2.5. And remember, 2.5, the half is 0.5. So go ahead and change it to a decimal. So 2.5 feet by 3 feet. So we're going to find the volume of this box. So remember that volume formula is V equals big B times H. And remember, big B equals the area of the base. So our big B is a rectangle. So that means we're going to replace big B with the formula for area of a rectangle. So that formula for area of a rectangle is length times width. And then we multiply that by the height. So now we're ready to substitute in our numbers. So that means we have 6 times 2.5 times 3. So we have a little math work to do. So we set up our problem, 2.5 times 6. So 6 times 5 is 30. Carry my 3. 6 times 2 is 12, plus 3 is 15. So now we have to figure out where to put our decimal. So I have one number after the decimal here, none there. So that means I'm going to need 1 in my answer. So I start at the back, move it. So that means the answer is 15. So 2.5 times 6 is 15. So I have 15 times 3. So that gives us the volume is 45 feet squared. But remember, that is just the volume for 1 box. Excuse me, cubed, not squared, cubed. But this is for 1 box. And the question told us that we want 2 boxes. So I want you to see how the answer 45 is there. So that's the first answer we eliminate. And if I have 2 boxes, it can't be less, so we can eliminate those answers. So we take 45, we multiply it by 2 for the 2 boxes, and we get a total of 90 feet cubed. So 90 feet cubed is the answer to number 1. So that is answer 4. All right, pause here. Get any work that you need to get for this problem. All right, now we're going to move on to number 2. It says a fish tank in the shape of a rectangular prism is 2 feet by 6 feet by 4 feet. A fish tank in the shape of a square prism is 1.5 feet high. About how much greater is the volume of the rectangular prism fish tank than the square prism fish tank? So we have to find 2 different volumes and compare. But I'm going to draw a picture first. All right, so we have both of our fish tanks. Now we have to go get the measurements for the fish tanks. So the rectangular prism is 2 feet by 6 feet by 4 feet. So we've got 2 by 4 by 6. And our square prism, which is just a fancy name for a cube, is 1.5 by 1.5 by 1.5. All of the sides have the same measurement. So now we have to go and find the volume for each one of these. So remember, we've got to start with our basic formula. Both have the same formula. Volume equals big B times H. So we're going to replace that big B with the shape of the base. So in our first shape, it's a rectangular prism. So that means big B is a rectangle. In our second shape, it says it's a square prism. So big B is a square. So now we're going to replace those 2 B's with their correct formula. Both of these use the same formula for calculations. So we have length times width times height for the rectangular prism and length times width times height for the square prism. So now we're ready to substitute in numbers. So when I substitute in for the rectangular prism, it is 6 times 2 times 4. So when I do that, I have 6 times 2 is 12 times 4 gives me a total of 48 cubic yards for my rectangular prism. So now we're going to go finish our calculations for our square prism or cube. So when I replace the numbers, length times width times height, I have 1.5 times 1.5 times 1.5. A lot of 1.5s there. So when I multiply 1.5 times 1.5, I end up with 2.25, and you can see my work right here. Then I'm going to take 2.25 and multiply that by 1.5. All right, so when I finish that multiplication, and you can see my work here on the right, I end up with 3.375 cubic yards. But remember, it says how much greater is the volume. So that means we need to find the difference between 48 and 3.375. So we can just round this. 3.375 is about 4. So essentially, it's 48 minus 4. And so our answer has to be a difference of about 44 cubic yards. Well, if we look, there's only one answer choice that's even close to our answers. So that is answer choice D. So please pause and record your work on your worksheet. All right, moving on to number 3. It says that the volume of the figure is 105 cubic feet. What is the value of x? So we got to start with our formula that we always love to start with. Volume. Hold on just one second. Let me get it to where we can get our formula. Volume equals big B times H. So remember, this shape is a rectangular prism. So big B equals the rectangle. So we're going to substitute in. Volume equals length times width for the area of a rectangle times our height H. So let's substitute in what we know. So we know that the volume is 105. And we know that that's equal to length times width. Okay, and we're trying to find our height. So we have 7 times 5 times our height. So that gives us 105 is equal to 35 times h. So we're trying to find the number for h to plug in to make our answer correct. So this is a multiplication equation. So remember, to solve that multiplication equation, we are going to do the opposite of what's there. So that means we're going to take each one of these sides and we are going to end up dividing each side by 35 to undo that multiplication. So 105 divided by 35. And if I do that work, 105 divided by 35, it is going to go in evenly 3 times. 3 times 35 is 5. Carry the 1. We get 105, and I have none left when I subtract. So that means our missing value for h, or x in this case, is 3 feet. If it's a multiple choice question, you can plug in the numbers and see which one makes a true statement. So please pause here and record the work for this problem. All right, so now we are going to move on to problem number 4. Okay, it says a cereal company is planning to change its cereal box as shown below. If the company decides to make the box 6 centimeters shorter, what is the new volume of that the cereal box will hold? So, right now our cereal box is 30 centimeters high, but they are going to chop off 6 centimeters. So here shows where they're going to cut it. So that means our height is not going to be 30 anymore. Our height is going to be 30 minus 6 for a total of 24. So that will be the new height of our box once they chop it off. Remember, in order to find volume, we need our wonderful formula. Volume equals big B times H. Okay. So remember, big B in our formula is the area of the base. And our base, since we have a box, is a rectangular prism, so our base is a rectangle. So we replace the big B with the formula. So we have length times width times the height of our box. Remember, our new height for our box is 24. So now we're going to replace our numbers in. Our length is 20 times our width of 8 times our height, our new height with the 6 inches cut off, is 24. So when we multiply 20 times 8, we could think about the fact that it's 2 times 8, which is 16. So that gives us 160 times 24. And when we do that math, our volume is going to be equal to 3,840. So our volume of our box is 3,840 centimeters squared. Sorry, I said squared, I meant cubed. It's volume. Okay, so if we have a look down at the bottom, that matches answer choice number 2. So number 2 is the correct answer. If our box is getting shorter, it can't be any more than when we chopped it off. So number 2 has to be the correct answer. So please pause here and record your work. All right, number 5. It says a candy bar has a package in the shape of a triangular prism. So that's important. Triangular prism means that our base is a triangle. So here's that triangle base, and there are 2 of them. Here's the other triangle base. Okay, it tells us the formula for volume is, oh, guess what? V equals big B times H. The question asks us, which expression could be used to find B, the area of the base, in square centimeters? So the fact that it's a triangular prism tells us what to do with the big B. So our big B is going to be the shape triangle. So we need to replace our formula with big B with the area of a triangle. So you go to your formula chart because you will have it. And we know that the area of a triangle is equal to 1/2 base times height. So that's little b times h. So all of this is only about our triangles. Right, and I realized that answer choice C did not match answer choice C on your document. But remember, taking half is the same as dividing by 2. So answer C is the correct answer choice, and it does match what's on your answer. So answer choice C is correct. All right, pause here if you need to get that work. All right, moving on to number 6. It says the largest pyramid in the world was built around 2500 BC by Khufu or Cheops, a king of ancient Egypt. The pyramid had a square base, 2.4 kilometers on each side, and a height of 1.5 kilometer. Find the volume of the pyramid in cubic kilometers. So since this one does not have a picture, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to draw our own square pyramid. All right, so I've got my square pyramid drawn. It may not be the best pyramid, but it'll work for our demonstration. So now we're going to go ahead and put some measurements with that pyramid. Since it's a square base, that means it's 2.4 on each side. So we can put our measurements on at least 2 sides. Then it tells us we need to have the height of our pyramid. So I've drawn in a height, and that height right there of our pyramid is 1.5. So now we would have to go to our formula chart and look up the formula for volume of a pyramid. That formula for volume of a pyramid is 1/3 big B times H. Remember that big B stands for area of the base. So we are going to find our base. It tells us we have a square base. So that means we are going to replace the big B with the formula for area of a square. So when I do that replacing that formula, the 1/3 stays the same. Don't leave it off. When we graded your quiz, we saw a lot of people that left off the 1/3 even though they had the correct formula circled. So the area of the square is length times width times our height. So now we're ready to replace those with numbers. All right, so when I replace that formula with numbers, I have 1/3 times 2.4 times 2.4 times 1.5. So we have quite a few little decimals in here that we have to work with. So we have a little bit of a challenge. So we're going to do some math. We're going to do some multiplying of 2.4 times 2.4. So it's not going to be as bad as you think. It's just like 24 times 24, and then we throw our decimal in at the end. So that's 16, carry my 1, that's 8, that's 9, 0. Make sure that looks like a 9. There we go. So that's 8, that one that was carried from a moment ago, we don't need. And 2 times 2 is 4. So I add that. I have 6, 7, carry the 1, 5. And I have to count my decimal places. So there's 1 here, 1 number after the decimal here for a total of 2. So 2 in my answer. So far, this part right here totals 5.76. Okay, after we multiply that, then we need to multiply by 1.5. And you can already see that I've done the work over here. And we end up with 8.640. So we have one more step, and that's to take care of this 1/3. So remember, 1/3 is the same as dividing by 3. Since it ends in a 0, we don't have to have that. It's just an extra number. So remember, when you divide, bring your decimal point straight up. So 3 goes into 8 2 times. That's 6. Subtract, I have 2 left. Bring down my 6. So 3 goes into 26. Make sure my decimal point's there. 8 times. That gives me 24. Subtract. 2 left. Bring down the 4. And 3 goes into 24 8 times. So our volume for this pyramid is 2.88 kilometers, and we're talking about volume, so it is cubed. So 2.88 kilometers cubed. So this one may have been a little bit of a challenge because there were some decimals involved with that, but you just work through it. Remember, if you need to round your numbers to whole numbers, maybe a little easier, and there should be one answer that would be close. So pause here so you can get all of that work for number 6 before moving on. All right, number 7 says the net of a square pyramid is shown below. Remember, square pyramid tells us the base is a square. And it asks us for what is the lateral surface area of this pyramid. So remember, lateral does not include the base. So we want all of the surfaces, but not the base. And a pyramid has only one base. So we are not including the square that's in the middle. We are only going to be finding the area of the 4 triangles that are around that square. And lucky for us, since we have a square, that means all 4 triangles have the same. So once we find the area for one, I can find the area for the other 3 as well. So since it's a square, that means all sides are 6. Okay. All of our triangles are going to have a height of 4 inches. So every single one looks identical. So remember, we need to go to our formula chart. So we need area of a triangle. And that formula is 1/2 base times height. And that base is the little b for the area of the triangle. So we're going to substitute in. So I have 1/2 times the base of our triangle is going to be 6. Every triangle is around that square. So our base is 6. Look for that right angle. So I have 1/2 times 6 times, and our height of our triangle is going to be 4. So we're doing just triangle number 1. So I have 1/2 times, and 6 times 4 is 24. So 1/2 times 24, remember, taking half of it is dividing by 2. So that gives me 12 inches squared for triangle number 1. So remember, this is for one triangle. But when we need to find that surface area of the lateral surfaces, we need to find all 4 triangles. So that should be pretty easy. We just take our 12 inches squared, multiply it by 4 for our 4 triangles, and that's going to give us a total lateral surface area, remember, not the bases, of 48 inches squared. So that would be our answer for that question. So now we're going to move on to question B. This one asks for the total surface area. So when we want the total surface area, we've got most of our work done because we're going to need that 48. With the total, we have to go back and include the square. So let's do our work. So for area of a square, it's just length times width. And lucky for us, those are the same numbers. So that gives me 6 times 6 for a total of 36 inches squared. And we're going to take our 48 inches and we are going to add it to it because we've already done the calculations for those triangles. We just have to get our total. So 6 plus 8 is 14. And my 1, that's 7 plus 1 is 8. So my total surface area for our square pyramid is 84 inches squared. So that would be our answer for the total surface area. So please pause here and record anything that you need on your answer sheets. All right, moving on to number 8. It asks us for the lateral surface area of this solid. And we're going to name this solid first as our rectangular prism. All right, so that means the bases of this solid are rectangles. And the base is the part that it's sitting on. Right, so I've drawn a few little lines in there so we can kind of see the different rectangles that are in this shape. So remember, lateral does not include the bases. So that means we are not going to include the top rectangle, nor are we going to include this bottom rectangle. So it's very important to identify what are those measurements. When we have rectangular prism, if it's not a net, then you have to remember what the measurements are that we need. So we're going to be looking for 4 rectangles because we are not including the matching bases that are top and bottom. So if we label our measurements as length and width and height, so 4 would be our length, 2 would be our width, and 6 would be our height, we do not need the rectangle that's the length and the width, nor on the top nor the bottom. So we have to make our other rectangles. So the rectangles that we need are the ones that have the width and the height, which would be this rectangle right here that has measurements of 2 and 6. And we also need this front rectangle, which has the measurements of length and height. So we're just going to go substitute on our numbers. So our width and height are going to be 2 times 6, which gives us 12. But remember, we have 2 rectangles that made that measurement. So 12 plus 12 gives us a total of 24 for those 2 rectangles. Now we're going to go and do our other rectangle, but I'm going to tell you which ones we did. We just did this rectangle right here and this one over here on the side that are both 6 by 2. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the ones in the front here and the one in the back there. So it's kind of hard to see when it's not a net. So hopefully they don't give you those. But if they do, we're going to help get you prepared. So our length is 4 and our height is 6. So we have 4 times 6, which is 24. So I have 24 plus 24 because remember I have 2 matching rectangles. So that gives me a total of 48. So now I'm going to combine these two to get that lateral surface area. So 8 plus 4 is 12. Carry my 1. That's 6 plus 1 is 72. So my area, my lateral surface area, is 72 meters squared. So that is option number 4. Okay. So please pause here and get your work for number 8. All right, moving on to number 9. Says find the surface area of the solid by the net below. So if we look, this is a triangular pyramid made up of all triangles. And it tells us that it's 52 inches for each one of the triangle heights. And if we look, the 60 here tells us that we have all equilateral triangles. So lucky for us, all we have to do is find the area of all 4 triangles. They are all identical. Each triangle is going to have a height of 52. So I can draw in heights and label each one of those heights as being 52. And that also means that each one of our bases for every single triangle here is going to be 60. So even though it looked like it was going to be a lot of work, it's actually going to be very easy because all 4 rectangles are exactly the same. So now we just need the area formula for a triangle. I said rectangle, but I meant triangle. So that would be 1/2 base times height. And remember, that's little b because we're talking about the base of our triangle. So I have 1/2 times our base of every single triangle is 60, and our height of every single triangle is 52. So we might need to work that out. 60 times 52. So that gives me 0 and 12. 0 for the next one, that's 0 and 30. So when I add that together, I have 0, 2, 1, 3. So 3,120. But remember, this is just for one triangle, one of those. And in our net of this triangular pyramid, we have 4 triangles. So our next step is to take 3,120 and we are going to multiply it by 4 because all 4 triangles are exactly the same. So I can just take this right here and multiply it by 4. So I have 0, 8, 4, and 12. So that gives us our surface area being 12,480 would be our, in its inches squared. That would be our total surface area for number 9. But I kind of messed up, so we need to kind of back up on this one. I totally forgot about our 1/2. I left out that part. So we can take our answer of 12,480, and we forgot we need to go take half of that because I was doing for rectangles and not triangles. So let's go divide that by 2. So it doesn't go into 1, but it goes into 12 6 times, and that gives me 12 exactly. Bring down my 4. 2 goes into 4 twice. Exactly 4. Nothing left. Bring down my 8. And 2 goes into 8 4 times, and we put our 0. So our final answer, now that we remember to put our half in there, so be careful, don't leave out parts of your formula like I just did, is 6,240 inches squared. Okay? So that is the final answer for number 9. Okay, so make sure you use the formula. Don't forget about those sneaky halves and sneaky thirds. Okay. So if you are an on-level class, that completes your review video. Okay. That covers all the information that you need to know for your test. Okay. If you are in pre-AP, then you will continue with the next 2 problems. Otherwise, you can stop the video right here. All right, pre-AP students, looking at number 10. So the diagram below shows two grain silos in the shapes of cylinders. The grain silos are used for storing grain after it's been harvested. So the first thing it wants us to do is calculate the volume for both of these cylinders. Since they are the same shape, we get to use that wonderful formula. Volume equals big B times H. So since they are cylinders, we are talking about our bases being circles. So we're looking at the circular base for each one. So we're going to replace the big B with a smaller. So you can go to your formula chart and you can look at that formula, and the area of a circle is pi times radius squared. Right, so since we have two cylinders, our new formula becomes pi times radius squared times the height. So we need to go to our picture. And you'll notice I have 10 for the tall, skinny cylinder and 16 for the fatter, shorter cylinder. But 10 and 16 are both diameters, and we need a radius. So we need to take half of 10. So our radius for our first one is going to be 5, and our radius, when I take half of 16, is going to be 8. Okay. The question like this that you're seeing on number 10, remember that you would be able to use a calculator to do the calculations. So we're going to go substituting our numbers for each of the cylinder. All right, now that I've replaced the numbers in our formula, our skinny cylinder would be 3.14 times 5 squared times 32, and our second cylinder would be 3.14 times 8 squared times 25. Remember, 5 squared means 5 times 5. Okay, 2 5s multiplied together in our formula. So 5 times 5, and 8 squared means 8 times 8. So you can put this information in a calculator on your test. So once we finish those calculations using our calculator, we get the volume for cylinder or silo A is 2,512 cubic yards, and the volume for silo B, that cylinder, is 5,024 cubic yards. So we have both of our volumes. Now we can answer choice B, or question B. It says if the farmer wants to store at least 3,000 cubic yards of grain in one silo, which one should he use? Well, obviously, he's going to have to go with the second silo, silo B, because it is capable of holding 5,024 cubic yards, whereas silo A only holds 2,512 cubic yards, which would not be enough to hold all the grain that he would need in that silo. So please pause here, copy your work for A and B. All right, we are moving on to our final question for pre-AP. It says a painter uses a roller like the one below to paint a wall. The roller has a radius of 3 inches and a height of 12 inches. To the nearest square inch, what is the area of the wall in which the surface of the roller will come in contact in one complete rotation? So we have a key word there, area. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, it's very hard to look at this shape and figure out what are they talking about. So instead I've kind of drawn my own little cylinder to help me with this. So it tells me that this cylinder has a radius of 3 inches. And then it also tells me that the height is 12 inches. So on your test, you will be given the 8th grade formula chart, and again, this is a problem where you would have or be able to use your calculator. So we have to think about this for a second. The circle part of the roller is not touching the wall. Only this part of the roller right here is touching the wall. If I have a net of a cylinder, it looks like this. We have two circles, and then we have a rectangle in between those two circles. Well, if I were to take up this rectangle and roll it together around that circle, that is actually the circumference of the circle. So we need circumference to give us part of our circle measurement. So we need the circumference, and we know the height of our cylinder. So on your 8th grade formula chart, it will give you that information. That circumference is 2 times pi times the radius. And then we'll have our height. So to find our surface area, which is just the roller part, not the circle part, we just need the lateral surface. So that is going to use the formula 2 times pi times the radius times the height. So now all we have to do is plug in our information. So we have 2 times 3.14 times our radius, which is 3 inches, times the height of our whole cylinder, or our paint roller, which is 12. Remember that you can multiply this in any order that you want. And remember that you're going to have a calculator to be able to do a problem like this on your test. Okay? And like I said, you do not have to memorize this formula right here. It's on the 8th grade star chart. So after you multiply all of that business together, you end up with the answer being 226.08 inches squared. And if it asks you to round to the nearest inch, then our answer would be 226 inches squared. Okay, so remember the last couple of problems that we just looked at? We'll be able to use a calculator. It's an 8th grade testing standard. Okay, so that completes our testing review. Hope you take the time to make sure you get all your work copied and get ready for your test.